I'm going to start recording now. So there we go. This is the first episode of Curious Collaboration Conversations. And I'm talking to Richard Claydon, who is my colleague in Round Pegs and also someone who helped me a lot in building my practice, building my thinking, building my network in last 4 months since I met him. So Richard, thank you for being here. Great to have you. Would you please say something about yourself to our listeners?
Thank you for inviting me. It's an honor to be your first guest, Eva. So I, as Eva said, I'm running Round Pegs, which is a community of disruptive thinkers in Hong Kong, where we're trying to push things like collaborative practice into the wider ecosystem in Hong Kong. I teach leadership at Macquarie Business School's Global MBA. Also teach organizational behavior on and off over the years, and really trying to use the management science and organizational science to push organizations into a future ready state.
Awesome. I love all of those topics. So Richard, you were in my 2 sessions last week where I started experimenting with public webinars and public collaboration sessions on Mural. So one session was preparation and introduction to Mural tool, which is online whiteboarding kind of tool that is widely used in design practice. And the second was a public webinar where we explored the topic of working from home. So now looking back, those 2 sessions, what was your overall experience?
I enjoy both of them. I'm always into trying to get technically better at things. So the actual training, which was done extremely well, it was very fast, it was very well facilitated, very interesting just to try and learn the new tool. And I saw the value of the tool immediately. It's very intuitive. It's very simple to follow, very simple to use. It gets past the fear of technology very, very rapidly because it feels like you're working on a real whiteboard. So I really enjoyed the training. The actual event, equally interesting. I mean, the most fascinating thing in the event is how quickly things happen. So in a 90-minute collaboration session, I mean, the speed at which people were adding ideas and putting things down on paper and then moving them around into themes, and moving that forward and structuring them into different ways was just fascinating. That was something that flew out at me, speed at which things happened, and perhaps something I wasn't expecting. So that was wonderful to see and be part of.
Great. That's why I call this Curious Collaborations, because I'm bringing people in who were not familiar with it. So the novelty level is really high and I expect a lot of surprises. So we are working together a lot on promoting collaboration practice, both to individual professionals, businesses, as well as large organizations and managers. So what is your impression on digital remote collaboration after these sessions, but also in what is going on with remote work at the moment?
So given what's going on, I think I'll take your question the opposite way around. So given what's going on in remote work at the moment, I could see that as a highly valuable way of running a meeting. So I think a lot of us are suffering video meeting fatigue, where you've got a whole bunch of faces and blah, blah, blah. And this was a different way of doing it. So you could see that way more would get done in an hour of this than perhaps a 3-hour business as usual type video conference meeting. So I think within the current environment and especially within organizations that work sort of globally, absolutely fascinating tool and something that I think people should be investing in. In terms of long term, I would suggest that it should be part of a collaboration strategy rather than the only collaboration strategy. So I think there are things that happen in the offline and the online environment, and they happen differently. So there whilst it's a great collaborative environment, there are still things I would want to see in an offline environment that perhaps you can't do quite as well in a online environment, because you don't see each other's faces, you don't see each other's body language. You can't go off on a quick tangent when something interesting happens. You've got to follow the process. So I absolutely see the value of it, but I don't think it should completely replace analog or offline collaboration. It should become a hybrid model where you're using both to make sure the speed of conversation is going on, even if you can't be in the same room as each other.
Yeah, thanks. I totally agree. I think the online collaboration is really a good preparation for offline collaboration.
Yeah.
If we can sift through all the thinking while we are remote, it can actually save us a lot of time when we get together and actually be more aligned, right? My next question is regarding the topic. So in last couple of months already, you wrote a lot about the best practices for working from home. You were on a lot of response teams, emergency response teams, about helping people with that. So that was also a topic of our public webinar. Is there anything that really stood out for you as an outcome, actual output, like ideas that people had in a session and something that came out?
Yeah, I mean, so again, it's sort of a dual answer. So because I have a reasonable level of expertise in this, when I've spoken to some of the top thinkers in the world in remote work and trust over the last sort of 5 weeks or so, at one level, it was a little bit frustrating in that I knew a lot of what was going on in advance, and I didn't feel that I could share my knowledge to the level that I would have done in an offline meeting. However, the thing that I found most interesting was the thing that I wanted to become part of. So you took it down to sort of 3 outputs and 3 different themes, and one of them was this idea of sort of trying to measure the quality of people's communication. And I found that fascinating, because I think there's it's dual here. So whilst if you're measuring their connection and their conversation, at one level you can sort of say, well, you know, we're finding out who the blockers are, who are the people who stop conversation, why we're not moving forward as rapidly as possible. And on another level, it's sort of mass surveillance gone mad, where you could be really looking at I'm really controlling and coercing people into these situations without them, and if they're not part of it, then they might get, you know, treated badly or laid off or something. So I found that absolutely a fascinating theme that we ended up in, because there's so much to explore then in the stuff I already know, which is what happens when your communication is being digitally monitored. You know, how much do you play along? How much impression management do you use to respond to that monitoring rather than the work that needs to be done? So there was a fascinating theme there that could have really been explored, because they've got very positive and very negative outcomes. So I found that really interesting, that the group of however many of us, sort of 15, 16 of us, that was one of the pathways we went down.
That's wonderful. Yeah, that was really, really interesting one. My next question is regarding, you already mentioned like that structure that we had, virtual lightning decision jam, is very good for meetings. As you say, like videos can't cut through some things. Is there any other application that you see in organizational level of this kind of public webinars that are like wide topic focused and that also use this rigid structures or rigid flows that might help in either organizational strategy moving forward or any management level?
Yeah, so in some of the research on meetings and connection and communication in meetings, especially digital ones, there's I think it's something like 45% of people leave the meetings not knowing what they have to do. And in online meetings, 27% of people have suggested they might have fallen asleep once. And lots of people leave the meetings without telling people, or they mute it and they're just, you know, they're connected, but they're not part of it, because so much of it becomes a random, it's badly organized, it's random discourse, it doesn't move quickly enough, so that you end up just being there rather than contributing and moving forward in a purposeful manner. So you can absolutely see how that lightning decision jam would be very, very useful in terms of structuring meetings, both online and offline, actually, to make sure that you're in the hour you're in that space, or the 90 minutes you're in that space, there's real purpose to that meeting, and you're going from so what was a sort of a complex problem situation to a number of things that you could do at speed, and which everybody feels they're contributing to all the time, rather than just one or two people arguing across the table and everybody else watching, or someone just giving status reports. So there was a real purpose there. Now, again, to go back to my last answer, the challenge with that speed of purpose is sometimes you perhaps don't get the nuance. So there has to be the balance between the nuance and speed of purpose. And that, I think, comes down to good facilitation. So if you get them both right, then you've got a really, really interesting product that I think adds huge value to strategy sessions, and even sort of complex problem solving, customer response sessions. So in that more agile field.
Where would you see the nuance being kind of opened up, or how would you open up the nuance?
So it's interesting. So I think within that one that you did, we got to the point where the next step was research. Mm-hmm. And this was where I found frustrating, because I've already researched it. So we got to a point where I've already got to. I don't know how to do it, but at some point, if you do have, and I think it's the difference perhaps between what I would call sense making versus design thinking. In that sense making, there's an assumption that there's some expertise in the room, whereas design thinking, certainly most of the workshops I've gone to, there's an assumption that there's not necessarily any expertise in the room. So there's a space between the two, which, with great facilitation, if there is expertise in the room, and it's expertise without ego, how can you tease it out so that that expertise injects itself into the conversations, and the conversations become rapidly more meaningful? And of course, if there's no expertise in the room, then it's fine to keep on rapidly going forward to a point where you go, right, now we need expertise, which is, I think, where we left it. Yeah. And that for me is where really great collaborative facilitation will work. Yes. Is that you tease into the expertise and you get it out without somebody thinking they're over important because they've happened to have read these one or two things. Mm-hmm. But that can be used to further frame conversation.
Yes, that's exactly where the next step would be, like talking to subject matter experts, talking to communities. But if that's already in the room, it can really speed up and open up right away. Yeah, that's great. So last question is, would you do it again?
Yes. I mean, I think I would love to do it again where I didn't have expertise in the subject.
Okay, so that's hard to find. That's hard to find in your case.
There are many things I'm not good at. Believe me, I'm only good at human behavior.
Yeah, these are all about human behavior at the moment because we are trying to deal with
the
pandemic.
So sort of human behavior and the structures of leadership, management, and organization around human behavior, which is of course informing everything that we're doing. But yeah, I mean, I would love to do it where I feel like I'm a beginner in the subject matter, because I think that would, you know, I would have rapid learning in that kind of environment, rather than feeling slightly constrained because I couldn't say what I wanted to say. Now, and that's probably possibly a good thing because I perhaps talk too much. But you know, that's I would love to be part of that one, because I think that would be really a very, very different experience. And just to compare the two and to see how I come out of the two. And I really enjoyed it anyway, but I think that would add something that I perhaps missed the first time.
Yeah. So the next topic that the group chose is career transformation.
Yeah, I mean,
And
that's certainly not something I have the same level of expertise in. So that will be interesting.
So it is on Monday, and feel free to join.
I will do my best.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Richard.
Thank you.